Welcome to Gray Areas for May 7th, 2024, episode 622. The OG crew is here. I hear myself on my phone, so it means we must be live. We must be working. Welcome to us having another of what is a series of disappointments talking about a Phoenix Suns season.
Yeah, but we have some stuff to get to before that. So if you hate the Suns, don't leave yet.
Yeah.
You can leave in probably 5 minutes, but there's some house cleaning to
actually,
take care of.
if you love the Suns, don't leave yet too, because you might not want to deal with the depression later. But still, we'll make it good.
And we're going to talk some other basketball too, but it's going to be like the more drama side of things, which is what half the people love about the NBA today anyways.
Yeah. So house cleaning stuff. Cody, now I'm so disappointed in Cody not being here. Yeah, it's a Suns. He could do a season opener of the Kings hockey team, and I would be there for that. Even though I wouldn't know anything, I would ask him questions. I would be engaged. What a letdown. Who agrees with me?
I mean,
Great. Well, that's really good radio. Anyways, okay. So
He called and asked. I said, yeah, you probably don't need to be here.
Chris, blame Chris. It's his fault.
Sure.
Yeah. I beat Rebirth, Dave. These are kind of all for Dave. All of these updates, actually. I guess the last one's kind of for both Chris and Dave. It's been so long since I've talked to Dave, though.
Yeah.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
This is 4 weeks since you were both on.
Yeah, it has. No, it doesn't feel like it. It has been a lot. I mean, 4 weeks. Oh, I'm used to talking to you every week, so.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm glad to see you're still alive because I haven't talked to you since the Sun season ended.
Well,
so that's.
It was that bad that it was a problem for a moment.
Yeah, you were on the ledge, but I beat Rebirth.
Okay.
It was really good. It's because it was really good. Well, sorry.
Oh, I'm like halfway through Cyberpunk. I'm trying.
Good. Oh, halfway. That's actually a lot.
Maybe. I don't know how big it is. Maybe I'm not.
It depends on how many side quests you're going to do. If you're going to do all of them, yeah, you might be like a third. If you're doing main story primarily, then yeah, you might be half. Who knows?
Are you enjoying it?
It's an intriguing game of my God, I hope this isn't the real future, but I enjoy it of what it is.
Sure. Yeah. I like to think the characters get to a point where they're charming enough to where you don't. By the end, I wasn't feeling that way, but at the beginning, I certainly was. I almost don't even. It lowers the stakes almost because everything sucks so bad. You're like, what does it even matter? You're gonna die. Who cares?
What set me off more, the worst thing that it did was, people have these cybernetic implants. It's fine, whatever. That's supposed to help them. When people were removing their eyes and face and just had a gap where their face should be, and it was like a red dot, and that was their vision. I'm like, nope. Internal stuff, maybe I can get behind. Nope.
Does it make you feel any better that most of those guys are the bad guys?
No, I mean, it's a good way of distinguishing the bad guys, but even so, the fact that anyone would want to do that blows my mind.
Yeah, true. I beat Rebirth, and so I just wanted to circle back because I said the game is really good.
Yes.
We'll see what the ending does. The ending's very divisive online. I'm not going to spoil anything. I thought it stuck the landing. And my only complaint is it maybe could have stuck it better. But you're not going to know until the third one comes out.
Right. And that was what I was alluding to when I was speaking so vaguely about it, was basically I'm not even concerned because I don't think it's headed in a bad direction.
Yeah.
But it's Nomura who doesn't always tie together all of his loose threads. So we'll see. It's way too early to judge. I think it's going to be fine, but there is the possibility that this goes really bad in part 3.
Yeah, there was a couple
percentage difference. That's what I'm curious about. What's the percentage of differences between the original playthrough and this? And a gameplay, but story-wise.
Well, so a couple things to know is it turns out, so really it's a sequel. It plays on you knowing what happens on the first game, the original. With that said, it's hard because everything is expanded. So even without the stuff that they add, let's just say they envision a scene, but now with all the graphics and all of the capabilities and the depth of character and the expanded writing, you'll have the same scene, but it feels like, oh, this is how it was supposed to be. And then you'll have stuff where the Harbingers of Fate are floating around the world and changing things. or keeping them the same, I guess, at the same time. That's all different, but that's probably, I don't know, 10, 15%. It's still hitting all the major beats for the most part.
All right. There's no stopping the train that we're on.
Yeah, it's like if Sephiroth were to go back and try to change things, almost like time travel, but not really. It's a little confusing to talk about, especially without spoiling too much.
Yeah. That's right.
But we've had 2 really good games. The first one was good. The second one is like one of the all-time great Final Fantasies. So you're going to like it when you get to it. We started our Fabula Ultima campaign, Dave.
You're going to have to repeat that.
We started our Fabula Ultima campaign. These are terms you should somewhat be familiar with, especially like Ultima. It's
Ultima is a weapon in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and a spell.
And a bad villain.
Yeah. It's a JRPG D&D campaign. Which okay. I have to, so funny. Maisie was in Trapeze and she was trying to explain it. Explaining to all of our Trapeze people, yeah, it's a JRPG D&D campaign. And everybody's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Including me.
A lot of letters.
Yeah. Maisie, why would you think anybody would know what that is? Just nonchalantly throwing out these acronyms. The only reason I bring it up is that we're going to, I think the plan is we're filming it already. It's like when a season goes into production and they're like, we started writing the scripts. We started filming some of them. We're going to post them on the site, I think. So you'll be able to watch them. But I know sometimes you're interested about D&D. You'd love to join if you had more time. So we're starting a new campaign, and it's been really fun so far. I think it's a superior game to D&D.
It is for our group. Because our group is really more collaborative storytelling based and not so much in the, dungeon diving and numbers and all that stuff. So I think it's a better fit for that because it's more open-ended.
You would have a hard time selling me on almost any way that the original D&D is better. I would say, unless you really like long, sort of sometimes annoying battles and number crunching. If that's your jam, then that's fair. But I think this is better in just every way. Like eventually, Dave, we'll go. I would like to spend like an episode talking about like the ways that it's better. I think that'd be fun. We have to get to a Suns cast, but I just wanted you to know. So you can feel included. So I played basketball the other day, and they invited a guy who's on the college team, the NAU college team. And I just wanted to tell the story because it's so fascinating. So it's NAU, right? So it's not like when you played against James Harden, who's like NBA bound. It's a smaller school. He was probably going at, I would guess, if he was even going at 50%, I would be thrilled. He was probably going even less than that. I held my own pretty okay for the most part. I got a block on him. Again, he's going 50%. But then he would shoot the most perfect form I've ever personally witnessed. And it was like, I might as well not have had my hand up so many times. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm not there. And if he happened to ever miss it, I'm like, that wasn't because of me. He just happened to miss it. The biggest difference was his speed. Like on defense, the speed. It was like passing lanes that are normally there. Passes that normally work in this class just didn't. He would just steal it every time. It was crazy. He wasn't even that tall. He's a little bit taller than me, but
I remember playing against a walk-on on ASU's team when I was a freshman who lived in my dorm, and he was a walk-on. He made the team as a walk-on, and I remember playing against him being like, you don't even dress for the game, and he's running circles around me. It's mind-blowing, the talent level.
Yeah, and he hadn't and the other thing is he hadn't played for 2 weeks. And like I know I'm getting up in years, but I'm still in like pretty good shape cardio-wise. We played like 3 games. I'm huffing and puffing. He's like barely even breaking a sweat. Now, part of that is he's only going 50%. And yet, 50% for him is still running up and down the court. Like, it's not like he wasn't trying at all. He was still like having fun with the game. But you could just tell there was another gear he could have gone to. And it was just incredible.
That's the fun part is when you play against those guys, it really goes where it's like, okay, we're down to like, we need 1 more bucket and they need 2 more buckets, and all of a sudden he drains a 3, steals it, and then goes and dunks it in a blink of an eye, and you're like, wait, you mean you could have been doing that the whole time?
Yeah, and like his pull-ups again, like I'm right. I think I have a great contest, and he just swish. And the way they swish it, it's different too. I don't know why. It just is.
That's hard to describe, but it's so true.
Yeah, and then he missed a dunk, but he tried a 360 dunk. So, it was really eye-opening.
Good lead into shitty basketball that's really not so shitty.
Yeah, I ended with basketball just to kind of be the transition to. Now we can talk about the Suns, but
beautiful.
I thought that was fun. So when you think about the gap between me and a smaller D1 school player, and then you think of the gap between D1 and best of D1, and then best of D1 and NBA, you're like, wow, people are not aware. So it's so funny when people are like, why don't they try harder? It's like, you have no fucking clue. You're not even in the stratosphere of analyzing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
even on a coaching level.
Yeah.
Yes. Even on a coaching level, it's like, oh, well, they need to run more pick and rolls. It's like, I'm pretty sure they considered that.
Yeah.
Or the magic adjustments word, which everybody knows that everybody else needs to make, because they have no idea what those are or how to pinpoint them.
My favorite thing is when Mark Cuban, and we're slowly getting to the Suns now, was like, I hate your analysis. Because it's so often you're not talking about the game. You're like, they didn't try hard enough, or the other team wanted it more. I doubt that. I doubt in the case even the Suns getting blasted by Minnesota. I don't think, Minnesota just wanted it more than the Suns.
Right. And even though it's a question of, you could argue that the Wolves won all the 50-50 balls because they played their asses off. But I don't think it was because Booker or Durant or whoever didn't want to win. They're very even-keeled, and we'll talk about maybe the pros and cons of that here in a minute, but just in general, I didn't walk out of that going well, Booker didn't want it enough. He wants to win. We know this from watching him for almost a decade. It just doesn't manifest itself in the same ways it does for other players. But for the lazy observer, Booker and Durant didn't even try.
Yeah.
They must not want to win. Okay, well, if that's the base analysis, we have nowhere to go from there.
Yeah.
No.
And so now let's start with the base analysis. So let's talk about the Suns. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Suns season is over. They got manhandled by the Minnesota Timberwolves, which was super embarrassing until I see what they're doing to Denver, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're just way better than everybody. We'll see what happens in the next two games.
You're right that we got manhandled by Minnesota. It really was kind of depressing that I think game 4, we played by far our best game in game 4. And when we're up by 2 going into the fourth quarter, I was like, oh, damn it, we're so screwed.
Yeah.
I knew only up by 2 going the fourth. I'm like, yep, we're done for. There is zero chance we're winning this game.
I mentioned it in our text thread. There is no, it's not even really a Pyrrhic victory. There's no victories whatsoever in a sweep. I was at least glad that Booker and Durant played well in that game. But to have them do that as well as they played, especially Booker, and still lose was revealing. It wasn't like, well, we almost won that one, and if it was just for this one or two things, it's like, no, we almost kind of won that one, and it took everything we had for the most part, and it still wasn't enough. So that's telling. Against Milwaukee, I still think we got beaten by the better team, but you can point to a couple possessions in those games where those were the difference makers. They were the fulcrums. It was back and forth. These were not back and forth. It felt like we were doing everything we could to stay in the games as long as we did, and game 4 just happened to last a little bit longer.
I don't even think Minnesota played all that good in some of the games that they won. I think we could play them 10 times, and depending on which 10, they beat us 10 times. They were just on another level.
In this series, it's just nuts, and part of my confidence going in, which we'll talk about that. Between the three of us, we talked about coming into this series where we were just like, man, Minnesota, we throttled them all 3 times we played them with relative ease. When I watched those games, I was like, man, Minnesota does not have an answer for us. Yeah, they were missing Cat for one of those games, but the first game we played them was 7th, 8th game of the year. We didn't have Beal; he wasn't playing yet, and Minnesota was 8-1 to start the season. And we beat them by 25. It wasn't even hard.
I know, but now you look at it and you realize, the second night of a back-to-back probably really did play a huge factor.
It does. But part of it was it seemed like all 3 times we played them, it was 3 different situations, and we beat them pretty handily each time. So it's like, okay, we've got a good feeling for this team. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, they morphed into their defense morphed into the 96 Bulls mixed with the 89 Pistons and 2007 Spurs. It's like, how did you guys become the best defensive team ever, it seems, so quickly? That was there all season. Don't get me wrong. I understand they were the number 1 ranked defense throughout the season. So it wasn't like it wasn't there. But this is seemingly on another level for them.
And it's just funny because their offense is pretty good. They're peaking, right? For sure. They're choosing the right time to peak. But it's not like, oh, they're just the Golden State Warriors offensive machine. It's just like they can afford to have some off nights. I think against Denver, Denver game 2 scored 106 points. It's like a juggernaut offensive night. They don't need it. If Denver only scores 80, there were a couple of games against us. It was like 105 to 92. It's like they have enough offense and enough players who can hit the big shots down the clutch. And they're impressive. But this is not a Minnesota cast. But it's just, we have to talk about them because they ended our season in pretty emphatic fashion.
Pretty thorough.
Yeah.
What's difficult to accept about that is the regular season results we knew could be a bit of a mirage. I even told somebody before the series that it's like, I don't know if I'm super confident because of that, just because I don't think we match up well against them. But like you mentioned earlier, Sean, the Denver stuff is revealing because we've seen that exact same scenario play out. Swarming defense, very active in the passing lanes. Game 2, they didn't even have Gobert, who was out having a kid, who's now the Defensive Player of the Year, announced today. So like after game 3, Sean and I had a conversation in the kitchen downstairs about like what was going on and what could be fixed. And I remember saying like, I have no idea. Again, you can't just look at it and go like, oh, well, think back to the Nash Suns. When the Nash Suns ran into trouble, it was like, well, they're getting bogged down in the half-court set. Teams are being more physical with Nash. Amari and Shawn Marion can't create their own shots. There were specific things you could point to and be like, all right, those are trouble areas. Maybe they'll get better. Maybe they won't. I have no idea how to fix what happened in those 4 games. And clearly neither did the Suns coaching staff, which we'll also get to. So there's a part of me that's like, I'm kind of okay with it. As much as it was not fun getting our heads kicked in for 4 games, again, I walk away from it going like, yeah, we deserve to lose. 100%.
If anything, the Denver series is making me realize, like, I'm proud of how we kept our composure because they're fucking losing it. They're throwing heating pads on the court.
Yeah, and not getting suspended, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, like they're going crazy. All of them. The coach is going. So, from that perspective, it is very physical. And they are, to an extent, I think Minnesota is taking advantage of the calls now that the way that the games are being officiated, whereas the Suns being this finesse team, there's no way we're going to be able to match their physicality, especially if the physicality is being rewarded. Where to go from here? We should talk about, because I think that's the biggest question, right?
Before we do that, I kind of feel like a retrospective on the regular season's a little warranted of just the roller coaster that it was. Because, man, the amount of hope going into this season was high. Obviously, we thought that we had the right pieces. It felt like we had 3 guys who could handle the ball, pass well, handle themselves in any position on offense. Nurkic was a great passer. Grayson Allen was a great pick. And I think we mentioned it once earlier this year where it's like Grayson Allen and Nurkic played about as well and were available about more than we could have possibly hoped for. Allen played better than anyone could have hoped for. Nurkic was available the whole season, of which that was the big question mark, whether he was going to be or not. And yet, Beal was gone a lot of the season, which, okay, we kept our head above water. Then Beal came back. We had a good winning streak. And like, okay, we're figuring this out. And then we floundered and floundered and floundered. And then we hit a point where late in the season where it's like, oh man, this is the tough stretch. Are we even going to make the playoffs? Are we going to make it in? Then we won 7 out of 10 against the league's best, pretty much, and said, okay, all right, we got this. We're going to be fine. And then get our heads bashed in. So what a roller coaster of a season that just never felt like it started properly. It always felt like we're okay, well, now it's for real. Now we're going to get there. Nope. This is just our feel out. We're going to get there now. Whole season, just it seemed like we're just waiting for it to actually start.
And then you get to bad matchup in the playoffs. I think had we played, this is, hindsight, who can fucking know, but I'm fairly confident based on how we were playing. Had we played any of the other teams that were eliminated, I feel like we would have advanced. I think we were better than those teams. Like the Pelicans, I think we would have been fine, especially without Zion. Like, I'm not worried about them at all.
Yeah.
The Clippers, they just took a nosedive. I don't know what. They scared me a lot for a bit in the season, and then they started sucking. But yeah, like OKC, it wasn't going to happen. Minnesota obviously wasn't going to happen. So we're right there. That's just like in the middle of the pack. We're competitive, but I would not necessarily say a contender. And when you trade what we traded for, that's a little bit disheartening. But it's also like that's the reality, and like do I want to go back to the dark days? Like, no, this is much better than that. Even though it is frustrating, even though the style can be pretty unlikable at times, it can devolve. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we've talked about it before where, yeah, it's a tough position to be in right now. But gosh, you look back at it and it's like, knowing what you know now, like, do you still do it? Almost like, what's the alternative? And I don't know the alternative's that much better.
Yep, that's the problem. Because, again, as I resign myself to this fate, this is not revisionist history. You make the Kevin Durant trade every single time. And even the aspects of that we didn't like, Cam Johnson not doing that well in Brooklyn, Mikal Bridges being exposed as a number one option, probably isn't a number two either. Love Mikal. No ill will towards him whatsoever. Other than the picks, though, there's no question that upgrading to Durant was the right move there. And then people talk about the Chris Paul thing. Chris Paul missed half the season, was single digits in scoring for the first time in his career, came off the bench for the first time in his career, brought some stability to the Warriors' second unit. I'm not saying we couldn't have used him here, but the idea to upgrade that position, especially watching what happened in last year's playoffs, made perfect sense. And people say, well, you could have just swung him for depth instead. I'm like, motherfucker, what depth? You can just say that, and again, just like you make this base level analysis of basketball, you can go, oh yeah, sure, Suns could have gotten depth. What trade? Tell me a trade that they could have done. Oh, yeah, we'll just trade Chris Paul for like 2 or 3 rotation guys. I'm like, yeah? What team wants Chris Paul going on 39 at that salary for 2 to 3 rotation guys? Tell me. Make a deal.
You know what's interesting, too, is I don't know. I feel like the Suns, as always, it's terrible timing, right? So we get an owner who wants to spend. That's when there's all these penalties for second apron teams, which normally, don't get me wrong, I would be for. I love punishing the richer teams, creating more parity in the league. Like, that's great. There's just bad timing for us, though. It's also weirdly bad timing for, like, this year, almost more than any other year, it is being shown that continuity, like, matters so much. And, like, maybe more than ever before in a weird way. And it's the year when we've traded everything for a super team. But, like, you look at, and this will get to a point I want to make later, like Minnesota, they sucked last year. Gobert trade, what a stupid trade. They never should have done it. They were, and maybe one of the worst number one picks of, in recent memory. And like, you look at them now. Dallas didn't make the playoffs last year. Now, I mean, they made some small piece trades, but people were like, Luka and Kyrie Irving, they don't work together. Well, they figured it out.
Ironically, the exception to that, again, so far, is Denver, which I don't think anybody would have expected. Maybe you even could say like Minnesota might win 1 or 2 in Denver, but not like this, not in such dominant fashion. And even then, like they're missing Bruce Brown, something fierce.
Well, and so I would say, like, look at the teams still in the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Contender-wise, maybe Denver has another gear. We'll see, but Denver's still there. You have Boston, the huge continuity, probably the best assembled team right now
at their core, but they added both Porzingis and Holiday.
Yeah.
The Thunder brought back Holmgren, who didn't play last season. Now, the rest of their starting line is pretty much the same, so they're building. But like you said, I mean, there's a lot of consistency on the roster, especially among its leaders. Like with the Celtics, they have basically 2.5 new starters this season, but Tatum and Brown have been there for years.
Continuity in the core, right? Yeah. And that's why, do I do the Durant trade 10 out of 10 times? Maybe not, but I would do it 8 out of 10 times.
Well, here's the problem, though. I agree with you, except after the DeAndre Ayton situation, it's no longer 8 out of 10 for me. If we were still on the same vibes as 2 seasons before and everybody was happy and, we had Monty's old, fucking Montyisms about not getting happy on the farm, whatever the fuck. Well, the point being, if this team was still happy, maybe they were still underperforming, maybe we were worried about them getting over the hump, but I'd be like, all right, we got to let this core rock. This is our young nucleus. They can get better. We can do this, keep our picks, whatever. That team's dead. For all the people that yearn for that finals team, that team didn't exist anymore before the Kevin Durant trade.
Well, and just to go off your like the revisionist history of this whole thing, I always hear like, yeah, we traded Jay Crowder for like blah blah blah. Bitch, you don't remember Jay Crowder didn't want to be here.
Yep.
So like you can't
literally quit.
Yes.
You literally quit on
decided not to play, and maybe that's because he wasn't going with Monty, and that's the reason. Doesn't matter. We did not have a choice in that. That was his choice. So don't bring him up in like how we botched our core. He didn't want to play for us anymore. So yeah, you're right. And I think Chris Paul could have added some leadership to this team that we didn't realize how badly we needed.
Yep.
That and a point guard. But I mean, it's the same thing. He did not play well this year. He's always hurt. He got hurt again this year. Not in the near the postseason at least, but he ended up, his team didn't make it to the postseason. So, that's what's tough. But now you look at this team, and at first I was like, okay, you got to trade something. You got to trade. Get Beal out of here if you possibly can, even though the no trade clause makes that very difficult. Because of that, get Durant out. And as time has gone on, I'm like, you know what? Why don't we try some of that continuity? Let's keep it together for another year. Even though Durant is, I'm not going to say washed, certainly, but he's not the peak Kevin Durant anymore. He's just not. He's almost more like the Ray, not this bad, but like he's more like the Ray Allen piece on that Heat team. Better than that, but that's kind of like the role. Like he can be a really good contributor. I don't think he can be like the number 2 option on for offense anymore. Turns it over a lot. He seems to wear down. Doesn't have the same explosiveness. You still keep him. Let's try to build that continuity, but let's add a little bit of creativity to the offense, ideally. And like another piece, a point guard, really, for me, ideally, that would be great.
Well, the idea of trading him to me is ludicrous because it's like spending $100 on spending like $20,000 on this, new car that you think is gonna be great, and then immediately saying, oh, well, the mirrors don't work properly, so then you sell it for $5,000. It's like, well, that's a horrible idea, which is exactly what we would be doing in this scenario. Like what we'd be able to trade Kevin Durant for and get back in value is nothing even remotely close to what we gave up. Not that I would expect that, but it's like night and day different. So trading it doesn't work. You can't trade Beal because of the no trade clause. Then there's people talking about trading Devin Booker, and I'm like, no, that's just not going to happen. It doesn't make sense fiscally. It doesn't make sense from a
ready. Fuck. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was gonna bring the Suns roster up, but the whole thing's broken, so it's fine.
Doesn't make sense fiscally. It doesn't make sense culturally. It doesn't make sense on the court itself. So just like none of that makes sense. So you're right. Kind of the only thing we can do is go with the continuity thing, try to make sure we leverage that number 22 pick we have this year to try to pick someone who can fit in on the bench, or if there's somebody that you can trade it for a halfway decent bench player. The problem is we're not going to attract those vet mins that we did last year. It felt like we're not getting the Eric Gordon level. Not that he was great, but we're not getting that this upcoming offseason. That's where we're going to have some tough things to do.
What about James Harden though? I'm just kidding, but maybe. What about LeBron James? No, I'm just kidding, but no. Yeah,
what if we draft Bronny?
Right, then he'll have to come here. He's going to be like obligated to.
Yeah.
The problem with Durant specifically is he's going to be second team All NBA. So it's sort of uncanny because if you look at his career numbers, his numbers this year look about the same as the rest of his career. But this is the first chance we've had the opportunity to watch him up close for a full season. And he's actually, because he's so smart as a basketball player, been able to cover up for some of his other areas that are lacking. Like Sean mentioned, there's definitely a little bit less athleticism. The Achilles probably guaranteed that. He's always had a little bit of a slippery dribble. His turnovers were about the same as his career this year. And I think a part of that's just because he's so tall and lanky that he's got a high dribble. So it's easier to pick his pocket, right? All these things and more. But not only is it impossible to trade him to get back what we lost, I also consider that a sunk cost. But then what do you get in a Kevin Durant trade that comes close to being a top 10 to 12 NBA player?
Well, you don't, right? You get picked. So, and everybody wants to, we'll get picks. We get like a treasure trove of picks. And we're like, we're not at a stage right now where that's going to help us. Treasure trove of picks helps us for the future. We're very much win now. So, if we keep failing and we decide there's a time when we blow it up, and that's the time where, we trade all our stars, we get a bunch of picks, and that's fine. We're not in that phase yet, so
and even
you're
then,
absolutely right.
The modern NBA is trending in a very different direction that I think the CBA might have to address the next time it comes up. We have the Stepien rule in place to protect teams from trading away too many first-round picks and mortgaging their future, right? Except there are now like 4 to 5 teams in the NBA who no longer control enough of their picks to matter anyways. So now if they did want to blow it up and try and invest a good player in get a return of picks back, the Clippers are fucked. The Nets are kind of fucked other than the picks that we gave them, but they can't be bad on their own. If they wanted to bottom out for a couple of years, they don't have their own picks. They just have ours. We would be in that same boat. So now it's difficult. Like the Sixers are basically out of draft capital. There's multiple teams now in this new landscape, and now with a more punitive first and second apron, where I don't know what the roadmap is. So just to circle back completely, you almost have to run it back because of the limitations financially, because it's a chance to build chemistry, because it's an opportunity for a new coach, because we'll probably hear about Frank Vogel any day now. I don't know what else you do except bring back that top six, which is Booker, Beal, Durant, Nurkic, Allen, and Royce O'Neal probably.
Yep.
Because it's not even necessarily clear if Eric Gordon's back. After that, I have no idea. It sounds like Drew Eubanks is out, and then the rest is just big-time question marks.
Good riddance to Eubanks. I was already on the fence about him, but it sounds like he was unhappy about something. I don't know.
Well, it was the lightning rod of hate for one thing.
Yeah, that's really hard to be the the fall guy when that's not your role. Like everyone, he was like blamed for you can't play Eubanks. He's the whole reason. It's like he did as much as he could with the lack of talent that he actually has. He's pretty athletic, but he's not a super talented guy. He's kind of athletic, and that's about it.
I finally realized it, and I told this to Sean. I leaked my big point I was going to make in the Suns cast, but the reason why the plus-minus between him and Nurkic was so drastic is that Nurkic is good to great playing out of the short roll, and Eubanks is a tire fire. And what situation forces us to utilize the short roll more than anything? Our players getting trapped on the perimeter. And if you can't swing it to a more effective player who's nearby in the wings because your angle's cut off, and you dump it to a big who then gets a 4-on-3 situation, that should be a plus for the offense if they have any semblance of knowing what they're doing. DeAndre Ayton was even, I would say, good at playing out of the short roll. Not great, but solid enough that when those opportunities arose, he could punish the defense. Eubanks got the ball in those spots and panicked.
Yeah.
It was not his skill set, and that's not really his fault. So that was the main reason why I realized, like, I have no idea why Thad Young didn't play more. There must have been something in practice, or maybe he punched one of the coaches. I have no fucking clue what. We weren't in those practice sessions and those film sessions to know. But to me, that seemed like the solution. Play a guy like Thad Young at the 5. Even Okogie is an okay passer. He has other offensive shortcomings, but to address that specific situation that plagued us all season, that's one of the few adjustments that I actually think merited a response.
Well, and I agree with you, and let's talk about that too. So Frank Vogel, I don't think you fire because, again, I want some. I had a really good analogy. Well, I thought it was a good analogy for this, and now I forgot what it was. We'll see if I can remember it in time for this episode.
Yeah.
The point.
I'll go off on a tangent to have you remember it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, let's try that.
He looks like an old coworker of mine that I hate, so we need to fire him.
Oh,
that's my expert analysis there. It's just.
Well, now I'm just distracted by your terrible point.
Short tangent, actually.
No, really. I mean, I don't know. I think it's hard to fire him because of continuity sense and the sense of, okay, what else are you going to get while you're out there? But also the idea of, like, Vogel's supposed to come in to be a defensive mind per se, and our defense was not great. It seems that we underutilized things. So there's a lot of things that you would figure a coach would do that didn't seem to happen. Now, again, we don't know what's going on in there, which is why the exit interview is so important. But it's hard to watch, and I guess that's the hard part when that comes down to what the coach does.
But here's the flip side to buy Sean time. Is that Frank Vogel's fault or not? And I'm not asking a question I expect an answer to. I have no idea because Vogel is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. This personnel was terrible for a defensive-minded squad. I mean, what could we be at best? Average? And we kind of were in the second half. It's why we were so good.
Weren't we like top 4 in the second half of the season?
In the last 3 or 4 weeks, yes. We were top 10 the second half of the season. I think 10th or 9th. So maybe he did do a really good job with the personnel we had, because you look at the individual players in the starting lineup and you're like, average, great if in the case of Durant in most situations. Nurkic is like average in some matchups. Beal, below average. Booker, kind of below average this year, by the way. His defense definitely took a step back this year, which was odd. The point being, like, we have no idea between the Frank Vogel dynamic of it, which you've touched on, and the Kevin Young dynamic of it. I don't know what to make of any of it.
And the Matt Ishbia dynamic of it, and maybe the Isaiah Thomas angle of it. But I bring up Matt Ishbia because apparently, Dave, have you heard this? That allegedly Frank Vogel went to management and was like, we need a point guard. And James Jones like, no. Why would we take the ball out of Devin Booker or any, we have stars. Why would we want the ball out of their hands? And it's like, that to me is a really fucking stupid response. If the story's at all true, which I think I don't know. I have no reason to not think it's true.
I mean, I can tell you a reason that I think could not be true. It's Frank casting shade, of casting his smoke screen to say like, no, see, I don't deserve to get fired. I tried. See, and so you leak your little sources and you try to,
Yeah, maybe, but
I don't know that that's true.
It was fun watching like 8 different reports come out the day after the season ended and pointing fingers in every which direction. KD wants this, bigger role in the offense. Vogel wanted this. Jones wanted this. It just seemed like everybody airing out dirty laundry.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I mean, I try to look back of James, if that report's true, let's go into the assumption that report's true. I look at somebody like James Jones who played on championship teams, and I look, he goes back to like Cleveland when he was on that championship team there. Okay, they had Kyrie Irving as their point guard. Okay, not a traditional point guard, but still someone who can handle the ball and initiate the offense. He was on Miami's teams when they won a couple titles. That was maybe the example he was thinking of, where you're like, okay, we just got 3 stars and we'll make it work, because it did work for Miami back then. Difference was they had LeBron James.
So they didn't have a point guard, but they had someone to initiate the offense, which used to mean point guard and doesn't necessarily mean that anymore. But exactly. Jokic, LeBron, these are atypical offense facilitators.
Sabonis.
Yeah. Suns don't fucking have that. Nurkic sort of, but then he gets played off the floor and the whole thing's a mess. And so, I don't know, but the analogy I was going to make, Dave, and then now is the problem because it's a finance analogy and you're a finance guy, but it reminded me of like you're trying to make an investment, like in a stock market, and you're trying to hit it big. And you're trying to hit like that next Apple, and you put like a bunch of money in and it doesn't hit right away. And you're like, well, now I'm going to take it all out and put it in another one. And if it doesn't hit right away, I'm going to take it all out. And it's like, what you're doing is you got to put your investment in. You got to let it grow with the stock market. Give it time to compound and grow. You're not doing yourself any favors by just trying to strike it big. And that's what I feel like if we try to retool again, it's just kind of doing the same thing. And maybe we can hit the right chemistry. Probably, though, we're going to benefit more from letting it breathe a little bit.
It reminds me of the idea. There's like the meme where like the guy's tunneling and he gives up on tunneling right as there's like this much dirt left before the diamond mine. And it's just like, is that where we are right now? Is that where we could be? I don't know. And the age thing is where we really come into question with all of that. It's like, is continuity there? Yes. But then we have Durant, who's getting older, and Beal, who's in his 30s, and Booker, who's not by any means old, and he's got plenty of years left in him, but is now a decade in the league already, which matters.
Yeah.
But
we're not Booker, saying to me, young core though, right? It's like
it's just Durant.
Next 1 or 2 years, depending on what we end up doing with Durant after this year, and then we'll see what changes we want to make. But
because Beal's in his 30s, yes, but he is 30. And, with players playing into their late 30s these days and falling off cliffs at 38 if they're not named LeBron, like Beal's fine as far as the age concerns with this current roster. If you want to blow it up and look in different directions, that's one thing. But, like, it's when we say age, we're just saying Kevin Durant. Because I don't really care about Eric Gordon.
He's such a vital part of the team, though.
Sure. I mean, it matters. No question. I'm just saying, like, it's not like, when the Diamondbacks were assembled and they won their championship, they were the oldest team in baseball history. They had like an entire starting lineup filled with guys in their mid-30s. And it worked for them because they happened to catch fire at the right time, right? That's not what's happening here. There's youth on this team, or at least players around their prime. I mean, Nurkic is 29. It's just when one more year means the clock ticks for Durant a little bit further, and how much mileage he has on him. He's an old 35.
I also don't. The biggest thing with Vogel, I think, for me is, and why I would not be heartbroken if we did fire him, although I don't think we should, it was like the minutes to Bull and the minutes to Thad Young, like we talked about, and the heavy minutes on the stars. It didn't make sense to me almost at any point in the season until the very end where you're like, wow, Devin Booker played 48 minutes tonight, but I guess he kind of had to. Like, what are you going to do? That's why it was so important to get that run earlier in the season. And you're like, well, we had injuries. Like, well, that would have been the perfect time to get these guys like to me. And I've demonstrated it already. These guys aren't another level. I don't fucking know. But Bull seems like a guy to me who needs to build confidence. And by putting him in for 2-minute stints, it's not going to do anything. He's not going to get the confidence. He's going to be in his head, especially on the defensive end. Let him kind of get out there, make some mistakes, and kind of learn and grow from it. And like, he didn't really get that opportunity this season. He got a little bit of an opportunity, but I would have liked to see that a bit more. And then the Thad Young thing. I'm like, what? Why Eubanks? And again, like, he was out of position. He was more than he was asked for. But we had another guy for part of the season that we just didn't do. And why? I don't know.
I think Bull is one that would have been exposed a lot more he played.
Yes.
I think he made a lot of mistakes.
Well, but let's figure that out, because right now I'm looking at that and I'm saying we don't know for sure.
Well, the problem is
it would have been nice to see it in the regular season rather than
trying to figure it out early in the regular season.
Even then, Bull's a known commodity. I had him on my fantasy team a couple years ago, just because even in limited minutes, he could put up these ridiculous stat lines. It's like, oh, Bull played 9 minutes tonight, and he had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, 3 steals. You're like, holy shit, like, what is this guy? It's his conditioning. You can see it in the games. After about a 5-minute stretch, he is cooked. And I have no idea why that's the case. It's just because it's harder for him to move because he's such a unique size. But he can't play these long stretches. So it was like, he's going to get 4 or 5 minutes in around the end of the first quarter, start of the second. If he plays okay, he might get one more stretch of that in the second half. If he doesn't, now it didn't feel like he got a fair shake in the playoffs, especially against a team that had pretty considerable size. So I'm not really disagreeing. I'm just saying there's a reason why he was available on a veteran's minimum and why he's always this curiosity. It's because he has deep flaws as a player to go with this really spectacular flashes that he has.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's akin to the struggling football team whose quarterback isn't playing well, and then thinking that, man, you just put in the backup, that's going to work, that's going to fix everything, and then you put in the backup, and you actually do put in the backup, and you keep losing. You're like, oh, maybe there's a reason he was the backup.
And I have some sympathy for Vogel because I'm Vogel, right? And I'm hired, and everybody knows I'm a defensive specialist. Cool. They know what I'm going to do well. I'm not really an offensive guy, but I have this great, genius offensive coordinator. He's going to bail me out. I'm going to let him take care of the offense. Turns out Kevin Young is a fraud, and now I'm like, oh, well, fuck. The thing that I thought was going to be helping me isn't there. So now what do I do? Because I'm a defensive-minded coach, and so like I give him a little bit of grace.
That's the problem, right? Is that we don't know who those decisions came down to. Was it Kevin Young talking about what offensive scheme to put in? Was it Vogel? Was he overruled? Was Ishby involved? Did he overrule both of them in some way? We're not in the room. We don't know. And that's the hardest part because fans are always saying things with such certainty. Kevin Young was X. Frank Vogel wasn't good enough at Y. And it's like, maybe, I don't know, because the problem is I don't think we put our offense in the best position to succeed. Whoever's fault that is, players, offensive coach, Vogel himself, I don't know.
Yeah.
The point book experiment is over. Now, he can run point for 2 or 3 minutes to end the first quarter when the bench is rotated in. I'm not saying he's like awful. It's not what he's best at.
Yeah.
And he's the superstar of this team, not Kevin Durant. So we need to be putting him in a position to be his best. And unfortunately, despite the roster we put together, that's also true of Bradley Beal. He's also not a 1. Yep. He's also going to be at his best playing off the ball.
That's my thinking of what, more than anything, is why I want that point guard, is because I guess a weird analogy would be like Jokic could play center just fine. Like, he's certainly serviceable as a pure center, but you would be negating what he really excels at, which is like this point center facilitating the offense, all of that. And it's like Booker can run the offense, but he's such a great scorer, elite at what he does. And then being able to pass out of when he has that killer mentality, but still making the right pass. If he's now facilitating the offense, like, he can do it, but then you could see it. Sometimes he has an opening, but then he's passing out of it. And even if it's a good look, most of the time you're Devin Booker, you're going to have a better, like, your look is better. So it creates this like sort of confusion. Whereas if we just had a point guard who lets Book be Book and Beal be Beal, even though their skill sets overlap a little bit, I think that could do a lot for this offense. And take Durant out of the corner. Fuck, like, please.
Hard part we run into there is, I guess, then we have Allen, who we just signed to a extension coming off the bench, which isn't bad if you're able to do it. It just puts a little bit off.
Make him 6th man of the year.
Yeah, make him 6th man of the year. Or, I mean, the other option is if the point guard is good enough, we bring Nurkic off the bench and we go like fucking nuclear small ball with Kevin Durant at the 5. I'm not saying that's necessarily better, but it'd be kind of fun.
That's bad for a 36 next year-old Durant.
Sure,
I figure.
But you could do it based on matchups too, to get Nurkic out of some of those tougher matchups he runs into because he's a little bit slow-footed and all that stuff. You could have the versatility to do that, and having somebody of Allen's caliber on the bench would help improve that side of things. You just need like a game manager at point guard. I mean, I do not want Kyle Lowry on this team. He looks fucking washed as hell and has for a couple of years, but like the stability he could bring in that position, because he's also somebody we actually could realistically bring in at a minimum. I'm not saying he's the answer. I'm just saying like something like that I think improves us in a few other ways that just sort of cascade off each other.
Yeah.
Because you can't run this back. Even with a new scheme, I don't think it's necessary. It's both scheme and fit.
Yeah. Chris, I missed who you said to bring in because the fucking dogs.
Oh, Kyle Lowry.
Kyle Lowry. Yeah, right. You know what? I would agree with that. I would think that brings a little bit. Plus, I would not, he's kind of annoying, but he has a bit of grit. I wouldn't mind a little bit more of that on our team. A lot of fans are spending a lot of time being like the roster construction, and this is why you don't just throw talent together. And I just don't think it's that useful right now because we can't change it. We are what we are for now, for the most part. So how do we improve this core realistically?
I'm trying to figure out who that is. I mean, just looking at point guards that could be available, and it's a unique position that doesn't come. Good ones don't come available and don't leave, pretty much. So, yeah. I mean, when you look at who you maybe kind of sort of could think of getting, Spencer Dinwiddie under contract the next year.
No, please no.
That's not a point guard.
Fucking hate
I
him.
know. I just don't even know.
Yeah.
This is the stretches I'm going to.
I'm just saying, like, I don't like Kyle Lowry, but that's the type of player, again, flawed, old, falling apart. But that's the type of, you need somebody who can be a game manager, because not to belabor the Timberwolves point, they were just like us. And I guess Tim Conley is just the best GM in the NBA because he built Denver and now he's built them. And what they fixed was, okay, we have too many big. Why would you sign Naz Reid to this extension? Why would you trade for Gobert? Well, they figured out a way to make it work. And you know what part of that was, honestly? It was that sneaky deal to get Mike Conley the year before.
Yep.
Somebody who, again, Conley is I think 37 now, or at least he's going to be soon. But he game manages. And when you have that much talent around him, you don't need him to be 2010 Mike Conley anymore. I mean, both year and points and assists. Well, you just need him to be 12-7 Mike Conley, and then when the team's freaking out, when Anthony Edwards is up his own ass, when Karl Anthony Towns has got 5 fouls in the second quarter, he can be like, all right, guys, let's chill. We're going to get you a look this possession. We're going to get you a cut here.
Yep.
We need something like that, both for the starters and to help the second unit.
That's why I'm like, you're absolutely right. And I'm like, I joke, like, let's sign Chris Paul. I'm like, well,
it's another option.
Minute. Maybe we should. I don't know if Chris Paul, I don't know if he feels betrayed. I don't know if he has no interest in coming back here. But I wouldn't mind it in the role that we would need him for, which is no longer, we need you to close out games. It's just help us bring a little bit of stability.
And you can even start.
Yeah.
You can go back to starting. You'll play like 24 minutes a night, but that's perfect for 38-year-old Chris Paul, right? So again, the solution, because we're so hamstrung in what we can do, is not going to be a pretty one. But those type of players, the older point guards who at least know how to run an offense, because of what you can get them for, which is just a minimum, hopefully, that's the opportunity cost we have to go for. And if it doesn't work, I mean, at least we tried.
Yeah, I mean, what do we lose if we sign fucking old-ass Chris Paul?
Nothing.
Like
zero.
Especially us, like with Robert Sarver, it's like, oh, if that money goes there, then it's not going. Our owner doesn't care about money, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it is a nice feature to know that our owner is willing to do it. I mean, he's shown he's willing to spend money, and the problem is it feels like this right now he's in the okay, I just have to spend a bunch of money, but that doesn't fix everything in the NBA. We've seen it many times before where you can't just spend money. It's got to be smart money.
You're right, and I hope he's learning that lesson. But I feel like so a lot of fans were really negative on the press conference.
It felt like he was denying things.
A little bit, but him saying like, I think we're in a better position than most other teams. I mean, I think he's right. Now, one of those teams like Detroit or whatever, like it's a lot of really bad teams that he's including in that. But the fact remains, like if you compare the dark days of the Suns, and if you're like, hey, you could have a team, they're going to win 49 games, might flame out in the first or second round, I'd be like, please, what an oasis in a desert of dreary fucking basketball that would be. It's like I get where he's coming from. Do you want that owner to be like, yeah, it's shit. All I made was mistakes. This is a busted core. We have no hope. No, I don't think so.
I liked the quote. It was I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it exactly, but it was something along the lines of, I'm going to be around for like 40 years, and we're going to win. There's going to be like 36 other teams that win an NBA championship over that 40 years, and I'm like, that's the kind of shit I want to run through a wall for. I love that because what it implies for the 4 years we win a title in, like that's good shit. And as long as it's not false bravado, at least he's interested. At least he's engaged.
Yeah.
Is he a little bit over aggressive? Maybe is he kind of an asshole behind closed doors? Probably. He's a billionaire, but like at least he cares about the team because Sarver had checked out a decade ago.
That's what I'm saying too. Is like these people don't they forget that we had an owner who did not seem all that interested in winning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have such short-term memories, so
yeah.
I look, Ishbia can have his flaws, and he does, and he will continue to. But like, if you look at where we were, like you mentioned, Sean, like look where we were, look where we are.
Yeah,
I'd still rather be where we are right now than where we were 10 years ago.
Hey, by the way,
10 years ago, it felt like we had no hope ever.
Yeah.
No.
Can we get Ricky Rubio out of retirement?
Well, I actually, when Ricky Rubio was playing again, I was like, yeah, bring him back. But I guess he doesn't.
I think he's done. But that's the type of like I'm thinking to myself like, could we kick the tires on Goran Dragic?
Yeah,
just somebody who I know is old and is not going to be a replacement level player, but fills that specific role that we need.
Yeah, exactly. I was for the first half. I texted you guys from the game. By the way, this shirt is from the game. I went to put, so that's why I wore it. This is the best part of going to the game was getting to this shirt. I was like texting. He's like, Akogi, he's like what we've been needing, and he played really good. And then fouled a bunch and got like ejected and like made a bunch of boneheaded plays. And I was like, okay, maybe Akogi's not the answer, but I sometimes like what he brings. I don't know.
He's so limited. He's so ridiculously limited that he can bring some energy for 5 minutes, but he'll get shut down real quickly.
I just, Dave, I know we talk about it a lot, but it's like, wouldn't you just be in the gym? Like if you have all the skill set and all you need to do is hit wide open threes that they're going to leave you for
35%.
Just
if you go and hit 36% of your open threes and you're going to get $10 million a year. It's like,
And like
I don't think I'd be doing
maybe he
anything
is.
else.
Maybe he's in the gym day and night and he just can't translate. I don't know, but I'm like, man, I don't.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
I agree.
Anything else on the Suns before we do a quick tour of the NBA and then wrap up? Because I want to touch on three things for about 2 minutes.
All right.
I hope that Ishbia is right that if in the next 40 years we win 4 titles,
I'll take one.
I mean, one. I know. It's one of those things that if it feels like, oh God, 1 every 10 years. Like, yeah, take one. Just have that memory
in
that
this
feeling
NBA
one time.
where like I feel like more like right now you look at any team like there's 3 or 4 teams I could legitimately see win the title.
Oh yeah,
Dallas is one of them. Weirdly, like if they like peak just right, I could almost see them winning the title too, which would make me sad. But
I think all 4 teams in the West and Boston are capable.
Yeah,
that's
weird.
Are getting their ass kicked right now, but yeah,
they are
losing by 22 right now.
They are, yeah. And OKC is so good, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to beat the Thunder, but we'll see.
No, I don't either.
We're at a place in the NBA where it is so damn talented. There are so many talented players in this league right now. It's
there's so many,
insane.
and then it's like you have the best team, and then you get a key injury. and then you're done.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yep.
it's tough.
The margin of error is very, very thin.
But again, almost to that point, that's almost why the Suns snuck in 2021 in a title with a roster. In hindsight, I don't think was all that good.
Everything clicked.
Just
Everything clicked
broke
the
right
way.
for us. Yep. So.
Jamal Murray should have been suspended.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe how he wasn't.
Not even just
Cannot
saying that as a Suns fan who's still bitter about Dion and
No, I don't
Amari or any of
care.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Just like, what are we doing if a guy's throwing not one but two things onto the court in live play, whether he meant to or not? I'm baffled. I don't understand. Somebody was like, well, if Denver was up 2-0 instead of down 2-0, they would have suspended. And I'm like, maybe. But like, what are we doing?
No, I think that's completely incorrect. I am like, so what if Towns stepped on it? Which you're like, oh, conjecture. He almost fucking did.
Yeah.
His foot was right next to it.
Yep.
What if he slips and hurts himself? And it's like, well, then you definitely suspend him. Well, yeah, but it's the fucking mentality, right? If you were so close, you have to kind of bring the hammer down so that this shit doesn't happen again.
I cannot imagine for the life of me legitimately having that thought that, well, because he didn't step on it, because he put his foot here versus putting it here, therefore you don't. No, that's bullshit.
Results-based
That's just
thinking.
luck.
Right.
Yep.
Because then if Towns does slip on it and he breaks his kneecap in half, then are we suspending Murray for a season
Yeah.
to make it commensurate to the crime? Because we're not doing that either. So
No, I hate that. The results-based thing. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That mentality is absolutely stupid. The fact he isn't suspended is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and like I know reputation matters, but like this is, akin to like if you go punch a fan, your reputation doesn't matter. There's a certain, it could maybe be a little bit worse. I think if you're Pat Bev, maybe that's worse. That might be another thing you want to talk about, Chris. But yeah, I was very surprised. Everybody was convinced he was going to be suspended a game. They're like, it's going to happen.
even most Denver fans, who to their credit were like, yeah, that's Bush League shit. Like he's got to not be up his own ass about it. Yeah, he was 3 for 18 and all this, but like no excuse. And then, $100,000 fine, which is what Gobert got for making this money-making gesture, by the way, which Murray also did last night. And even the defensive, like, well, maybe he was like trying to throw it to the equipment manager and it sailed on him. He threw two different things.
Yep.
You can't possibly make that excuse for him. So that was mind-boggling. Patrick Beverley I wasn't going to talk about, but fuck Pat Bev, and we'll see what the league's punishment is for him to start next season.
I at this point, with the ball throwing into fans, when you're getting now fans involved.
Twice.
Yeah.
Again, twice.
you
Look.
From my perspective, you
be
tried to
hyperbolic.
hurt.
Yes.
I know you just threw a ball, but you threw it fucking hard. Try to hurt a fan, right? How far removed is that from punching? I know physically it looks very different, but like if the mentality is we got to protect the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And his first throw accidentally hit a woman in the head.
Yeah.
Who, if it was me, I would have. I'm
Well,
not the only person to make this reference, but because I'm a wrestling fan, I would have the full neck brace on in a wheelchair and come out to a press conference and be like, we're suing Patrick Beverley and the Milwaukee Bucks for millions of dollars because of emotional distress and physical damage.
Yep.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to be hyperbolic. I will. You have to get rid of him. Like, kick him out of the league to this level. The history, the repetitiveness, the now involving fans. Why do we need this person in our league?
Well,
anymore?
Dave, and results-based thinking again, like what if he had slipped a disc on Chris Paul when he shoved him in the back? Or was it Ayton that he shoved over?
Right. Or what he actually did to Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In a way that defined the remainder of his career.
So now you're going at fans too. And it's like, Dave, I'm glad you brought that up because I had the same thought of like, at what point is Adam Silver like, you're just banned from the league? Sorry.
Yeah.
You're done.
There's too many incidents, too many things. And
at least a season, given the Ron Artest treatment.
And he had a limp dick response today on his podcast, I think. I watched part of it. Was not impressed.
I don't subscribe to his pod.
I don't either. So it's a miracle I was able to find it. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. I bet some people were being assholes to him. Some of them were probably using the forbidden N-word. I understand all of that. And athletes shouldn't face that abuse. But guess what? They all do. And only one of them threw a ball at two fans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't have to face that. But they do. And most of them still handle it with aplomb. So fuck him. And also fuck Jimmy Butler.
Okay,
that's the last one.
You guys are bringing that up. This would be great for the fans and also for me because I don't know I haven't heard anything of him yet.
Effectively, Pat Riley went on the warpath yesterday, and essentially Butler a couple days ago was like, man, if I had been healthy and playing, like, fuck the Celtics, and, like, also the Knicks would definitely be out too. And I'm like, well, you didn't even play the Knicks. How would that matter? Like, what are you talking about, dude? And then Pat Riley yesterday was like, if you're not on the court, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm over the sweetheart era of Jimmy Butler. I'm over a guy playing 40 regular season games and then showing up sometimes in the playoffs. And it's like, well, yeah, if we hadn't been in this and that. Well, if you had played more in the regular season, you wouldn't be in the play-in again, facing a team that can beat your ass. So from the rest and load management perspective, and also Butler kind of being annoying with his emo haircuts and shit, I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what? Get him. Because I'm tired of the act.
I kind of think the emo haircuts are funny, but everything else I agree with. All this big talk. Oh, well, that's very easy to say when you are never on the court. We would have beat them. Sure.
I hate that this mentality that goes in the NBA where it's like, oh, well, I was injured, so therefore we would have won. Nobody fucking knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Injuries play a factor. There's no doubt about that, and it changes the outcome. But nobody knows. You can't just say, well, if I was in, we would have won.
And
no,
can I just
it
touch
doesn't
on
work
this
that way.
Because I know everybody's annoyed with Booker saying chillin', we're chillin', myself included. But I'd much rather have Booker never makes excuses. I can't think of a time Booker has made an excuse, even when I wish he would have. Sometimes tell us what's wrong, but he just doesn't. He doesn't make excuses, and I'm like, you could have a Devin Booker, or you could have a Jimmy Butler. It's like,
and if I can do the victim complex for just one part of this, because I feel like we've been very even keeled and level headed about all the failings of the Suns. If Devin Booker did what Jamal Murray did last night, can you fucking imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Why is he victim? Why is he public enemy number one? To this day, I still don't understand.
It's because he's so common. I guess fans have a problem with that. I don't know. Every once in a while, you have a Luka that brings out a little bit of an edge of Devin Booker. Otherwise, he is just calm. And like you look at, again, him versus like Denver, they're all imploding. They're losing their minds. And Book was being I don't say harassed because I think for the most part it's good defense, but like Jaden McDaniels is a great defender, and Booker had to deal with him the entire series, and he wasn't like complaining or anything. He just did his business, and he still came out and scored 50.
Last thing about that series, by the way, how Michael Malone didn't get a technical last night is also beyond me.
Yeah,
I don't understand. The last thing I was going to say, the third point, because it wasn't Pat Bev, was going to be the illegal screen called at the end of the Knicks-Pacers game last night. But to speak to an overarching point, I just want consistency. I like the way the game's being refereed now. I like the extra physicality and the defense that's being allowed. But, like, Anthony Edwards got a tech for staring in game one. And then Michael Malone comes out, says the magic word. We can read his lips clearly because he's screaming. There's a motherfucker in there.
Yep.
And he's this close. Audio listeners, it's an inch.
Yeah.
From a referee's face screaming at him. No technical. And I'm like, I kind of even don't mind that, but then you can't call the one against Edwards the night before.
Yeah.
Like, it's playoff intensity, so if you're going to let, especially if you feel like the call was borderline, and it was, because their player got kneed in the fucking nuts, like, let him shoot off a little bit as long as it doesn't cross the line. But it did cross the line, and you teed up somebody for way less the night before.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. And then Aaron Gordon's right there, and is also, he's holding his coach back, and he's like, yeah, you fucked up. That was a fucking... like,
and by the way,
just cussing at this ref, and there's no tech.
You are absolutely right. And also in the mix of all of that, Anthony Edwards is also arguing because he wants an and one. So we've got we got a player from one team, a player from another team, and a coach all screaming at a referee in a dead ball. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Can I say, how do you guys feel about Anthony Edwards? I like him. I think he's great.
I like him.
I
got no problem.
I don't like the showboating, but I'm like, you know what? You've earned it.
Yeah, for now.
And like Kevin Durant said, like,
you win, you can do what you want.
Whatever you want.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know what? A lot of people don't like showboating, and I get it why you don't like showboating. But man, it's fun to watch someone who seems like they're just having fun, right? Who is passionate and joyful in the game. And that's, if I have any criticism of Booker, maybe I feel a little bit that way, where it's like he's too cool for that. I would like to see a little bit more of the celebration side of it, but I'm not. I mean, well, whatever. I'm not going to ask for it.
That was what made the Cam Johnson game so special, right? Was him screaming for like 20 seconds after he hits the game winner, because we don't see that out of. I mean, Mikhail got a little demonstrative every now and then, but like Ayton, Paul, Booker, all too cool for school. Durant also, same way.
Yeah.
Which is why Beal was refreshing, because we saw a little bit of that from him. It's
We
like,
did.
So I don't really hate Ant. I do. The only thing I'll say is this, as kind of we start to wrap up. They better win.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because if they don't, we watched what happened 3 years ago. It's all fun when you're winning and when the Rabbits got the gun.
Yeah.
But when you don't, all of a sudden that celebrating becomes front running. And they're going to be walking a very thin line the rest of the playoffs. So we'll see. Because fans are going to turn on Anthony Edwards. They're going to turn on probably Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at some point here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably going to happen sooner than later for Victor Wembanyama. He's only been in the league one fucking year. The leash is shorter and shorter all the time.
Yeah.
I hate fans.
I
fans so much.
What I liked about Anthony Edwards though is like, yeah, I talk shit because then I want you to come down and like make a big play and then talk shit to me. And it's like, well, you're better than everybody right now, so it's not going to happen. But the only reason
that's the mentality we want, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the competitiveness we want.
Exactly. The only reason I brought that up is we had multiple fans at a Suns game. I hate Phoenix fans, man. And so we had two really poor losers standing up screaming at Minnesota fans, like in their face. And you're like, great. What a great impression to leave. One guy, they almost got a fight. They were like screaming, fuck you, back and forth because the Phoenix guy initiated it and was like, stand up, let's go. And the Minnesota guy's like, fuck off, fuck you. And I was like, great. Maisie apologized to the Minnesota fan on the way out. Like, I'm sorry, we're not all like this, please. So, anyways, I was disappointed in her fandom.
Look at Maisie trying to salvage our fan base.
Yeah,
Exactly. She's doing what she can. Yeah.
There's a reason why the Suns and 4 guy escaped the criticism of the annoying ass guy with the fucking hundreds and the counting for Giannis's free throws and shit, because he was right. Because he was backed into a corner and responded by beating the shit out of somebody and then just going, Suns in 4. So like he escaped criticism even when we faltered because everybody's like, well, yeah, that dude was in the right. In that situation, those fans are not in the right. We're getting our ass kicked. We got to handle it with humility.
Yes.
The end.
Yep. Screaming at a fan because your team is getting their ass beat. It's so fucking stupid. I hate that
It's
shit.
the same reason like rec league softball was always such a mess, though, because it's like the last vestige of whatever competitive fire some of these people had at some point, and they're clinging to it with everything they've got. Fandom's like that, too.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the team. I'm going to help them win. I do this and that. And then they lose their fucking minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't see it as a fan who's also just cheering for their team. They are the villains. It's fucking stupid. So immature.
I love it. I love sports, but it's still sports at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's Minnesota, by the way. It's not the Lakers. When we had Lakers fans talking like assholes the time we went to that playoff game a couple years back, it's like, well, you're the Lakers, so fuck you. You've won 17 titles or whatever, although not that many recently.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you get to do that, but also you don't need to because you've experienced success. Like, we should get credit because we root for a team that can't win shit.
Yeah.
That's why Minnesota advancing, or like Denver last year, I'm like, on the one hand, it sucks because the list of teams that are not in our situation gets shorter.
Yep.
But I'm like, cool. Because if I was a Denver fan, I would love to experience that. If Minnesota wins this year, they've been played for 2 decades. Awesome. Good for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how our mentality should be, but some of our fans are dipshits.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, that's the end of our Suns rant. We may not talk about them for like 5 months. We'll see.
Probably won't. Unless,
some trade, some
we
splash in the
James
offseason.
Harden, that's probably worth talking about, even though he sucks now.
Yeah, if LeBron James.
No thanks.
LeBron. If we get LeBron, we're going to have an emergency cast.
That's an emergency cast, even though he'll be 75 years old next year. Like that.
Hey. He's the one player in the league that's still older than me. All right.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm just saying there's not going to be that if it's like, oh, Vogel got fired and they hired X. I don't give a shit. We'll talk about it as we lead up to the season, but we're not going to be. So, barring something strange, probably that's going to be the last time the words Phoenix Suns come out of our mouths for a bit. But
thanks, Doug. He's got 2 weeks on me. That's it. He's literally 2 weeks older than me.
That's right. Hey, last note as we sign off here. No show next week. We'll be in Phoenix.
Vacation.
Yep. So no show next week. We'll be back on the 21st. Don't even know what we're going to do then. We'll probably talk about it when we're off. But it's the first episode we'll miss this year, and one of probably only 2 or 3 at most, because we usually do about 50. So.
Peter, thanks for saying great cast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
A lot of the Suns casts we do are kind of for us in some ways, but we hope they're still entertaining, and so we appreciate it.
Yeah, I think he's mentioned this before, but at least our passion comes through. Like, we clearly care. We know what we're talking about, and at a certain point, I'm hoping when we win a title sometime in the next 30 years before I fucking die, that we'll have all this to look back on and be like, yeah, there's the journey. There's the season we did this. There's that off season. There's the 10 years we sucked.
Yep.
We'll be able to look back on all of it and we'll be like, cool. Look how far we've come.
Yeah, exactly.
I have zero shame admitting that during the really bad parts of the season, I absolutely put on our Suns cast right after the Valley-oop because we were so happy.
Oh, yeah.
And that was for game 2 of the Western Conference Finals?
Yep.
Imagine if it was game whatever, clinching of the NBA Finals.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, grayareas.live, or at youtube.com/@grayareaslive, the @ symbol. You can tune in there, join the live show. Your chats pop up on the screen. We involve you. It's fun. Audio's still fine too, but come to the YouTube. We'll see you in 2 weeks.